Over the last couple of weeks, we have seen Harris kind of start to, her lead hasn't really held up or expanded to where the Democrats would want her to be by the time we got to September. Joe Biden in the 2020 election in RCP was leading anywhere from 7 to 12 points nationally, depending on the poll you were looking at. And right now, Harris is putting up 2 to 3 point leads, maybe a few 6 and 7s as her best numbers. And the 6 and 7s tend to be the outliers in the polling aggregates and not the 1 or 2s. And Donald Trump tends to be able to close up the election leading into the last few weeks very well compared to other GOP nominees and even other candidates in general. And so we may be at a point where the former president is going to be able to close up on her and may put her at the same position we had Joe Biden at before the debate. And not only that, if the debate does not go well for Harris, which I have a very big suspicion it will not, it's going to get ugly. And it's already looking pretty ugly for her right now. Her internals are very bad. They have her down in Michigan by 1. They have her down in Pennsylvania by 2. She's probably down in Nevada. I mean, I haven't seen the numbers because they're not available. Those are not available. But in Nevada, they're probably so bad because that's why she had to do no tax on tips. I mean, there's no other reason why she would have had to have done that besides her internals looking really bad there. And her internals in New Hampshire must also look really bad because she is now campaigning there the same day Trump is doing the Fox News debate by himself. So her team thinks that it's a better idea for her to go to New Hampshire instead of go to a presidential debate. That should say everything about where the campaign is right now. They think it's less consequential negatively for them to go to New Hampshire instead of going to the national debate. That is how bad of a spot they're in. They have practically turned her into a new candidate with a bunch of new positions. And the problem with this flip-flopping stuff is it didn't work for John Kerry in 2004. It didn't work for Mitt Romney in 2012 because you don't gain any trust from the other side of the aisle, and you don't please your own base. And this is the problem that people are now talking about. Kamala Harris is talking a big game about, oh, yeah, we're going to, my values haven't changed, but, oh, we're changing all these policies. Oh, now she's in favor of abortable. Oh, now she's in favor of no tax on tips. It's like, very interesting, very similar behavior to John Kerry and Mitt Romney. But then, they ended up going on to lose. And the reason why is because when you try to appease to the other side like that, it doesn't necessarily tend to work out the way that they think it does because it pisses off your own base and then you don't gain anything from the other base either. So you're really just shooting yourself in the foot. And so right now in the Electoral College, Donald Trump is the one that is favored to win the Electoral College based off of everything that I've looked at, all of the data that I've reweighed. So essentially all of the polling data that is skewed left, I've reweighed it to a tied electorate nationally. He seems to be ahead by 2.5 points-ish, closer to 3. We're going to get to that in just a second. And if he's winning the popular vote by 3, it's over. It's pretty much done if he's leading by 3 in the popular vote. And so we're going to go ahead and jump to that right now. We're going to go ahead and see what that looks like in the Electoral College. So looking at my On Point Politics 2024 election odds, this is the map we have. Donald Trump's odds are at 80% because all the polling averages that are used are readjusted numbers because a lot of the polls tend to be inaccurate because they oversample certain groups, they undersample certain groups. I am weighing by party just as an experiment to see how close I can get to what the actual popular vote's going to be. Harris's odds, they're not rounding out correctly, but it's probably like 80 to 20. Donald Trump's leading in the odds by 60%. And if we look at these states, he is favored in all of the Rust Belt states. He's expected to win Wisconsin by around 6.5, Michigan by roughly 4 and change, and Pennsylvania by a little bit over 5 points. So he is favored in the Rust Belt. Georgia, he's winning that one quite easily, close to about 8 or 9 points. North Carolina, he is destroying that one. Arizona, he's winning by 6 to 7. And Nevada is about 7 to 8 points. So he's killing it in the Sun Belt as well. States that are safe red have odds of above 80% for either candidate. States that are likely have 70 to 80. And we actually see here Donald Trump's odds in Florida are almost 80%. It's like right there. So a lot of people, when I posted this earlier today, were like, oh, well, why do you have Florida as a, likely red state in the betting odds? But not betting odds, but in the odds in general. But that's because it's literally about to hit 80%. It's like right there. North Carolina is as well. Maine second is pretty much a lock for the former president. His odds to win that are fairly high at 87%. Donald Trump right now in Florida, 80% odds. North Carolina, 73% odds. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, he's anywhere from 60 to 67% odds. In those states, Georgia, 69%, so almost 70. He's almost in the likely margin in Georgia. Arizona, 68, and Nevada, 69. So these are getting pretty close to being very likely odds. And right now we have states like Washington, Donald Trump's got a 26% chance. Colorado, right now, Harris got a 71% chance to win. Similar margin in Illinois, 75% chance in New York. New Jersey, the odds are slightly closer. New Hampshire, Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, Maine, and Nebraska second are the ones that are basically within 50. And we're going to be going over the electoral map. But before we do that, let's talk about Bet Online. Bet Online is a betting website where we can basically see the latest betting odds for the presidential election, the Senate races, and much, much more. There are different things from you to pick for in terms of this. For example, we can either see Trump favorability on October 1st. You could basically predict where that is going to be. You can basically say who's going to be the winning party. You can bet on the Senate elections. You can also bet on the mayoral races in San Francisco. You can bet on the presidential debate and who is going to win that one. I may or may not bet for Donald Trump. We'll see what happens by the time we get there. The governor's race, we also have a couple of these two. New Hampshire, the Republicans are the underdog, as well as North Carolina. Man, if you bet on that one, that would be nuts. House of Representative elections, clearly Republicans are the underdog right now there. But clearly you see that this is a website where we have a little bit more of a balanced electorate when it comes to the betting odds. So if you guys want to check this out, make sure to go to the description down below. You could sign up for free and start betting today. So now that we are back to the Electoral College map, we are going to take a look at the 2020 Electoral College map first. This is the map that Joe Biden effectively won by. Pennsylvania is lean. My ratings are 0 to 1 is tilt. So that being the lightest shade of the blue and the lightest shade of red. The lean category is the second shade of red or blue. That's the color of Michigan. Likely, lean is between 1 and 5 points. Likely is 5 to 15. That includes Minnesota, New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine at large, Colorado. I don't know why I have any of these likely. Those should all be safe. And then the safe, of course, is anything above 15 points. And that goes for the Republicans as well. And Donald Trump should be likely in Alaska for 2020. So this is where we're at in terms of the 2020 presidential election. Donald Trump is doing fairly well, in some of these redder states. He kind of held his own in Iowa, Ohio. He kind of held his ground in Texas by improving with some of the Hispanic border counties and withholding his ground in Miami-Dade. So Hispanics kind of saved him from a very large electoral college loss, including some suburban voters in North Carolina. Those African-American and some rural white gains did eventually help him in North Carolina just enough to not lose it, which would have been really bad for him if he did. Now, looking at the way things played out, it was a very close election decided by 40,000 votes in Wisconsin, Georgia, Arizona. And that election cycle, both candidates gained 9 to 10 points in favorability from their previous nominee. That being Donald Trump gained about 9 points in favorability from himself in 2016. Joe Biden gained 10 points from Clinton. So you could assume, okay, it's going to be a higher turnout election, and there's probably going to be a little bit more competitiveness. It could have gone either way. People should have known Iowa and Ohio were going to be likely. People should have known Texas was going to be likely. Now, here is the problem. This is the problem. Rasmussen reports just dropped their Harris favorability. It's at 41%. Their approval rating for Donald Trump is a little bit in the higher range. the approval ratings tend to be decent indicators of where the race is going to go. Rich Barris in the beginning of August also did this. Their recall approval of Donald Trump was 52%. Their Harris favorability was about 46, 47. That would indicate an R+6 national environment. If you were to go based off the approval ratings, you could get a pretty accurate picture of the race, depending on how you approached it. In 2020, it was pretty straightforward. Donald Trump's approval rating was 46. Biden's was around 51. You had D+5, and then you basically ended up getting around D+4.5 in the popular vote. So just looking at the favorabilities, you could have, or approvals, you could have just basically assumed what the popular vote was going to be. And looking at in 2016, Trump was at 37%, Clinton was at 42%. And then when you basically combine that together, you have D+5, but you also have to factor in that third parties were hurting Clinton massively in 2016. And so that's why you were able to get that. Now, looking at the race right now, do I think it's going to be R+6 like it would have been with Joe Biden? Probably not right now. But I still think R+3 to 4 national environment is very likely. And the pollsters are not showing that. And it's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. I mean, you have a lot of disaffected, African-American males that feel like they identify as American first now. They don't have the civil rights mentality that their grandparents did. And a lot of Black voters are concerned about immigration. It's a really big issue. Immigration, the economy, inflation, these things are really big in 2024. And it's really, really making voters sour to the Democrat Party. And not only that, incumbent parties around the world have been losing on massive scales. I mean, they've been losing badly, like really, really bad. And so when you look at the economy, when you look at inflation, when you look at the border, when you look at all these different things, especially with the way Kamala Harris is, because if this was Obama's administration, I would still say it would be a lot harder for Trump to beat Obama, only because Obama actually knew what he was doing politically and is a likable person to an extent. That is what I have to say about Obama. But Kamala Harris is not the female Obama. I don't care what Let's Talk Elections tells you. I don't care what Harry Sisson or the little 8-year-old kid that is now being in politics. I don't know why. I don't care what they tell you. She's not the female Barack Obama. That's an insult to Barack Obama. She's nowhere near that. And she doesn't have any white working class appeal. She peaked way too early in the polling data to the point where it's like, you're kind of messed up, because if you're a little ahead or running even with the guy while you're peaking, you're gonna be screwed. I mean, you are. You're gonna be screwed. And when you reweigh all the polling data from RCP and several pollsters, we decided to include Donald Trump is almost at a 3-point lead in the popular vote. And that's with around 2.4% undecideds left, and Kennedy's is still going down. Kennedy's support is still going down in the polling. So we have yet to see where all of his support is going, but it seems like a lion's share of it is going to Donald Trump, and it hasn't even finished going to Donald Trump or Kamala Harris completely yet. He's still polling at around like 2.2%. He was polling at like around 4.1 a couple days ago, so it is going down. But I wanted to leave him in the average to see where his support would go over time. And we can actually go on my website for this here. Guys, make sure when you want to see what the national average, what I have is go to onpointpolitics.com. It's in the description down below. I'll be updating it daily. We're going to also be updating the graph for you to see the odds, nationally as well. But you can track all the way back to August 22nd, when I had about a 4-point lead for Donald Trump in the national popular vote. When you reweighed all the data, Harris did kind of gain, because you did see some earlier pro-Trump polling against Kamala Harris fall out of the aggregate. But it seemed like, comparing yesterday to today, she did kind of stagnate in the polling data. But Donald Trump also did as well. He's at 48.5, Harris being at 45.7. So that's pretty close to around 2.8% in the national popular vote. Kennedy is at 2.8% here. He was originally at 4.2. So, I mean, he has gone down, or 2.8. So he's gone down like a point and change. I remembered it as 2.2. Undecideds are going down. And here you see a little bit of a dip with undecideds. I decided to weigh for undecided. So pollsters that actually weighed, that had less undecideds got a higher weight in the average slightly. There's a kind of system that I have that grades the polling to be able to kind of track more accurately the picture of the electorate we're going to get. And so when I applied that, Harris did gain like almost a full point, and Trump basically stayed where he was. Everybody else basically stayed, basically filtered out some of those undecideds that would have gone for Kamala anyway. So I'm kind of glad that I actually did that, because I probably would have been kind of inaccurate if I hadn't done that. Or maybe it's possible if I hadn't left that alone, things could have worked itself out. But we'll see on election day. But clearly, Donald Trump, according to my national average, is in the lead right now. He's in the lead by almost 3 points in the popular vote. And for people who know electoral politics, here's what you don't understand. If you're a new voter, if you're new to this kind of stuff, a 2-point lead, 3-point lead in the electoral college for Donald Trump is a shellacking. It's a beatdown of the Democrats. It is a shellacking of epic proportions. And the reason why that's the case is because Donald Trump lost the popular vote by 4.5 in 2020 and barely lost the election. 2016, he lost it by 2 and barely eked it out. And that was with him almost winning Minnesota, almost winning Maine and New Hampshire. So if he's winning it by 3, 4, which is actually what my model has right now. I mean, if you were to basically add up the popular vote, it does have him ahead by a little bit over 4. So that's kind of what I show. And it's like, and for all we know, he could be up 4 because Kennedy is boosting him in the average. I mean, you literally see it. Like, as time has been going on, as Kennedy's gone down very slowly, Donald Trump's actually net gained a bit. Harris hasn't really gained as much. So you literally see as Kennedy's going down, Trump is getting a lion's share of the vote, which is what I suspected what would happen. And that's what you're starting to see. Donald Trump is gaining with that kind of voter. You're seeing it unfold. And right now, the former president's got a really good shot at the Electoral College. And I'm just saying right now, the map is not what people think it is, because people get stuck in the conventional wisdom of the previous cycle, and they think the states are going to behave the same way, but no elections are the same. None of them are the same. Right now, the white working class voters are going to break for Donald Trump very heavily this cycle, because Kamala Harris does not have any appeal to them at all. Donald Trump will probably do very well with working class Hispanics, will do very well with working class Asians and working class Black voters. He will also do very well with Gen Z voters. This is why states like Colorado, Washington, Oregon, Illinois, New York, some of the Northeast are going to get more competitive, because you're going to see a lot of those low prop, independent voters that typically are more male, that don't tend to vote in presidential elections, come out for Donald Trump. And that's what you're going to see happen. And it's going to be a problem. And what you have is you have the old guard Republicans. They're older. They're slowly dying out. For example, Arizona, the McCain types are slowly dying out because they tend to be a little bit of an older coalition. It's just the truth. And so as they keep going away, that little stigma of Donald Trump in Arizona is going and going and going. And it's like, okay, in my forecast, Donald Trump is winning Texas by, I believe it's a little bit above 15, and he's winning Florida by like 13, 14 points. So they're voting pretty close to each other. And so it's like, if Texas is such a big win, if he's winning it by double digits, almost over 15, it doesn't make any sense for New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada to vote the same way. It just wouldn't make any sense. And the electorate, compared to 2022, is going to be less college educated. You're going to have a lot more low prop, low propensity, non-college educated voters that are going to come out for Donald Trump, who only vote for Donald Trump. And that's not reflected in the midterms. That is what people don't understand. Midterms and presidential elections are not the same, because the electorate in midterms is way more college educated, to the point where they're really not comparable. It's just not comparable. It's like going to a party and you show up and it's the yearly party and you have an equal amount of men and women. And then you go to the party that happens bi-yearly or something. So like, it's like a 6-month thing. So in the middle of the year, it's like, oh yeah, we're going to go to the mid-year party before the next year's party comes. And you notice that there's way different people at that one. It's kind of the same thing. you have a different crowd of people. You may see people that go to the main party every year, but you may see a more different group of people that it's like way more imbalanced, and you probably have less people voting or less people going to the party because more people want to go to the main party. So it's, you see what I'm trying to get at? It's like completely different. It's completely different. The electorates are different, and Donald Trump just exacerbates the working class vote. And people are undermining this very heavily. He's doing a lot better with independent voters to the point where he's probably going to beat Kamala Harris pretty easily compared to what happened in 2020. Robert Barnes has said when you look at fundamentals, the economy, foreign wars, and I forgot what the other one was, but I remember the economy and foreign wars were the big things to look for. And he just said this year it's a combination of 1968 with the foreign escalation of Vietnam. It's the same thing with the Ukrainian war and the Israel-Hamas war. And now you also have the economic perception of 2008. Not as bad, but you're combining both issues into one election cycle. And that's not good for the incumbent party. And incumbent parties around the world have been losing nationally. They've just been tanking completely. So again, I'm just saying it's not looking good for Kamala Harris. I mean, she's going to hold up in California. I mean, she's going to hold the good margins, but she's not winning all these other blue states by safe margins. It's just not happening because Donald Trump will do better with white voters compared to 2020 by a pretty substantial amount, to the point where it's going to almost be unrecognizable from 2020. I mean, Georgia, North Carolina, I mean, those are going to be gone. Those are in that column 100%. I mean, it's just, it is what it is. They're going to be in the GOP column. Georgia, not that long ago, has mail-in ballot data that right now the requested ballots in Georgia are at 88,000. In 2020, it was 1.3 million that were counted. In 2016, which is the more comparable year because there was no COVID, they ended up counting 266,000 absentee ballots. And right now, they only have 88,000 in Georgia. And I don't know when the deadline is, but it's probably soon. So if they end up even getting in the 150 to 200,000 range in absentee ballots, that's going to be really bad for Kamala Harris, because when it was 266, Hillary Clinton lost Georgia by 5. And Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris is very comparable to Hillary Clinton. I'm just saying, on election day, when you see Donald Trump win, don't be surprised, because I'm telling you firsthand, she's more comparable to Hillary Clinton than she is comparable to a female Barack Obama. It is just the truth. It's the truth. And looking at some of these likely blue states, I mean, yeah, you could see some of these go into that particular column. You know, you see them kind of go. Let me see how light that. Okay, all right, fine. You see that go in the likely column, roughly give or take. You know, within that 10 to 15 point range. That's kind of what you're seeing, give or take. New York is also going to be in that column. Maine's first is also going to be in that column as well. Alaska, forgot to put it safe. Arizona and Nevada, these will also be likely victories as of right now. Now you're like, oh my God, what, Arizona? What's going on? Guys, if he's doing a 15-point margin in Texas, if they're polling Texas and they're getting R+9 with an electorate of R+1 in the poll, Texas is going to be a double-digit margin. The samples have not changed from 2020. The party ID compositions of the samples are just as left-leaning, sometimes even a little bit more left-leaning than what they even were back in 2020. And they're showing Donald Trump improving by like 5 to 10 points in polling in Texas, Iowa, Ohio, Florida. This is why I'm so bullish on him in these states. Even the most accurate pollster from Iowa has an R+19 poll for Trump that they have yet to release, because they are scared to release it, because all the other pollsters are putting out these crap plus Kamala +10s in Michigan. It's not going to happen. It's not right now. It's not happening right now. Things could change. Right now, this is how I see the race. Donald Trump is right behind that 270 mark, and Wisconsin does it for him. He's right now in my adjusted average. Just to give you an idea, my adjusted average has Trump ahead by 6.4% in Wisconsin. And that's for me weighing for an electorate that's like a point redder than 2020. and it was R+5 was the electorate in Wisconsin. And you're like, oh my God, but the electorate can't be redder. But in 2016, it was D+1. It got 6 points redder from 2016 to 2020. So for me to weigh it like a point more Republican, it's actually pretty generous, to be honest, for the Democrats. It could get 2 or 3 points more Republican. And right now, Donald Trump has a very commanding lead in Wisconsin. In the average, she's literally at like 42, 43%. Like she's super low. And Donald Trump's like at 48, 49, which is a more realistic vote share because that's what he's always gotten in the state of Wisconsin. He's always gotten around plus 47, plus 47 and a half in Wisconsin. That's what he's gotten in both elections. All these averages that have him at the mid 40s, low 40s in Wisconsin, they're a joke. They're a joke aggregator. Do not listen to them. Looking at the competitive battlegrounds, Michigan, Pennsylvania are going to go to Donald Trump right now. Harris is not going to do well with these voters in Macomb, Erie, and Lackawanna, and Northampton, and then in Michigan. And like, it's just not going to work. Saginaw, like the upper Michigan Peninsula, like it's just not going to go well for Harris in some of these places. And even Pennsylvania, again, they just came out today that we got mail-in ballot request data, and right now there are 131 less ballot requests on the Democrat side than there were 4 years ago on this day. That's a horrible drop-off. That's really bad. That's bad because that's a little bit over the margin of what they won the state by last time. They won the state by 80,000 votes, and they just dropped off 130,000? Bruh, and that's only the mail-in vote. And that's only the ballot mail-in request. That's not even counting the people who vote on election day. So 2 to 4 point range that I have. I mean, my average has him winning it by, I think it's 2.7% right now. That's like roughly where I have him at. Michigan is actually her best swing state, or Minnesota, excuse me, is her best swing state. She's actually up at my average by 4.8%. Like she's killing it here. This is her best one. Her best one. This is her best one. But when those really big pro leads that she had earlier in the month, when they drop out of the aggregate, it's going to drop to like +2. There's not a lot of polling data out of Minnesota right now. So once that big like super pro liberal poll from Minnesota drops out of the average after a month, it's going to go down. I don't expect her to win it by 4.5 or 5, but I do think she could probably win it by 1 or 2. It's possible. Just because I think she may appeal to some voters in Hennepin. That's how far gone they are. But I think she may do better in a place like Minnesota because of the Hennepin counties. But in the Iron Range, she's going to do very badly. She's going to perform horribly there. Nebraska's second. With the electorate that we have, the suburbs probably moving to the right, with independents moving to the right, it's probably going to go Republican. And now we have the 4 tilt states on the map. Yes, New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine. Yes, these are the tilt states for this election. Yes, you heard me correctly. New Mexico, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine are the most competitive states on the map. This is because independent voters are moving to the right, and it's a lot more younger African-American and Hispanic voters that are moving to the right this cycle. And a lot of those happen to be in Virginia and New Mexico. And independent voters are very concentrated in Maine and New Hampshire. They make up about 45+% of the electorate in New Hampshire and Maine. It could be even more this year, actually. It could be even more. And Kennedy in those states was planning on getting like over 10% of the vote. And now that their vote went to Donald Trump, it may be ugly. It may be pretty ugly in the Northeast for Harris. When it comes to those, I mean, my adjusted average has Donald Trump up in New Hampshire by 2. Just to give you an idea, I literally had to cut the electorate in half for Republicans for him to only be ahead by 2. Literally, I had to cut the electorate in half. That's how bad the Democrat samples had. I had to cut the electorate in half in order for me to get just Trump +2 in the average with about 3 or 4 polls. That's how bad the polling is getting in New Hampshire. In Maine, it's not any better either. I mean, there's 1 poll in the average right now, and it's that Maine +17 poll. And when you weigh it by party, she's literally ahead by a little bit less than 2 in the average. It's horrendous. It's horrible. It's really, really bad. It's atrocious. I'm telling you, it's really bad. And so with Maine, I think it may go to Donald Trump. It's very close, but I'm just saying it could go to Donald Trump. Kind of thinking it does right now. Virginia and New Mexico, I think that these are really close. New Mexico, you do have the Albuquerque area. It is a problem for Republicans. It's very iffy to predict this one. I'd say maybe it's a point or two for Harris, but Virginia is going to be that sleeper state that's going to get really close. And on earlier during the night, people are going to be watching it and they're going to be freaking out. They're going to be like, oh my God, why is it so close? Because all the latest polls have it within 3. And when you weigh all the latest polls by party, it's literally a 0.8 percentage point lead for Harris. It's literally a 0.8 percentage point lead. And I'm waiting for an electorate that's pretty much the same as 2020. So if the electorate's any redder than 2020, Donald Trump's probably going to win this state. So this is where my election map stands right now. Donald Trump is winning 319 electoral college votes to Harris's 219 electoral college votes. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.